wanna feel it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Alex and I talk about movies on this channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is a spoiler-free review, of course. I'm seeing it a week early, so no spoilers here. I will do a spoiler-filled review once the movie is released next week. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is once again written and directed by James Gunn. Peter Quill, still reeling from the loss of Gamora, must rally his team around him to defend the universe along with protecting one of their own. A mission that, if not completed successfully, could quite possibly lead to the end of the Guardians as we know them. Now, I know a lot has been said about the quality of the MCU lately, as well as superhero movies lately. Maybe we're experiencing superhero fatigue. Maybe the MCU is just pumping out too much content as we know it's becoming too much to keep up with. But I think universally, if there's one project anybody's looking forward to, it's Guardians of the Galaxy. These are beloved characters, and James Gunn brought them to life. He made them a household name. I had no idea who the Guardians of the Galaxy were before 2014 when that first movie came out, and that first movie was excellent, and I really do like the second movie as well, and so I had a very high hopes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Volume 3 takes a lot of big swings. A couple of them don't necessarily hit, but in terms of emotional weight and drama, Volume 3 has the most of that stuff out of the three movies. I don't think it's as good as the first movie, but it is better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And that's not me saying that I hate Volume 2, because I really do like Volume 2 a lot. I actually think it's quite underrated. I don't really understand why people don't like it all that much, but 3 for me hit me more.
We'll all fly away together into the forever and beautiful sky.
It had more emotion to it. It had a sense of finality for these characters, and these characters felt like the characters that we've known and loved for the entire time. As I said, the movie takes a lot of big swings, and those swings mostly deliver, but there is a lot of movie here. I'm still processing it. There's a lot that it is trying to do, and sometimes it might be a little bit too much, especially with some certain storylines that feel like they're in here just for setting up something to come in the MCU, when you learn later on in the movie that they're actually setting up things that happen later on in the movie instead of later movies in the MCU. So it is a lot of movie, and at times it might feel too much. I actually think this could have been shortened by 10 to 15 minutes as well, but for the most part, it still has the fun and it still has the humor of all the other Guardians movies. There's an action scene towards the end of this movie that is one take. It reminded me of a James Wan action sequence, like a lot of the action in Aquaman. But this one take in this movie makes sure that it takes the time to shift to every character involved in that action sequence so that they get their moment to shine, because that is towards the end of the movie. So it's giving them a sense of finality and a last hurrah for you as an audience member to see the characters that you love do something really cool in the final moments of the movie. The glue that holds this movie together, though, is Rocket. A lot of the story revolves around him, and that's where a lot of the emotional weight comes in. There are scenes in this movie that really had me bawling my eyes out. I became a little weenie in this movie, and one scene I don't know why, because there was another scene that I thought hit harder than this one scene, but I guess it must not have for me. I guess the scene I'm talking about now hit harder than that other scene, because I didn't cry in that other scene, but I cried in this scene that I'm talking about. And the person that I went to the movies with was like, just looked over at me. He's like, "You son of a bitch, you're crying." Like, yeah, that scene got to me for some reason. That's the type of emotion we're in for with Guardians of the Galaxy. It plays with a tone that is darker, plays with a tone that's more dramatic. It has a lot more emotion to it than the previous two Guardians movies, and maybe more than a couple Avengers movies that the Guardians of the Galaxy were in. I would say, in terms of the dark tone, you're probably looking at something as close to the Gamora and Thanos scenes in Infinity War, maybe even a little darker. And I also love how James Gunn structured this movie in some parts. It's not necessarily a straightforward narrative. You have stuff playing out in the present, but then you also have things in the past to give more background to certain characters and the villain himself, who I thought was actually a lot better of a villain than I thought he was going to be. He's better than Ronan, that's for sure. I don't think he's Kurt Russell ego level good, but he is functional even if the actor is overacting in points and he's just really yelling his lines like he's going berserk or something. It was actually kind of funny. But his plan, his goal, his motivation was clear. Just his pathetic excuse for what he wanted to do and the pathetic excuse of what he was doing made all the sense in the world. And so I'm not going to sit here and say he's a great MCU villain, but he was functional for the movie. And I think for this round of MCU movies from Phase 4 to these couple in Phase 5, he's definitely one of the better villains. Those flashbacks give him and a couple other characters more time to get to know them, and characters that we already know are present in these scenes as well. And that just makes you feel for these characters a little bit more than you might already care about them. I mean, you care about them a lot, but in those scenes, it clicks even more as to why some of these characters act the way they are. What makes them tick? I'm not gonna say who they revolve around, but the glue that holds this movie together is definitely Rocket. There's emotional gut punches with him throughout the entire movie. I'm not gonna get into them here. I'll just say I did like the way James Gunn handled it in this movie. I expected it to go one way. It sort of went that way. It was somewhat undone, but not completely undone, if you know what I mean. I'll get into more of that in the spoiler review. And then he goes in a direction with another character that I was really looking forward to, that I really thought was going to happen, and then he does undo that one. And I just wish he had the balls to do what I thought he was going to do with that. But I will give James Gunn a lot of credit. James Gunn is a filmmaker who actually takes the time to care about his movies. It doesn't seem like he's just pumping out another MCU movie. It doesn't feel like his movie's part of the MCU machine. These three Guardians movies actually feel like they have a lot of effort put into them. The CGI is magnificent here. There's been a lot of complaints lately in the MCU with the CGI. I thought it was up to par here, especially on the creatures. Man, it looked photorealistic for sure. Especially Rocket, and there's this character in the trailer he meets up with named Lila. They looked really great in CGI, but it was just nice to know that James Gunn was filming on sets instead of just on green screens where you just see characters plastered in all green and their face is really just the only thing that's not digitally created in the movie. And it felt nice that we had actual actors wearing costumes and acting on sets and interacting with different props and filming on location. It felt like an actual movie for the first time in a while in the MCU. The character of Adam Warlock is in this movie, and I will say he was a bit of a disappointment. This is one of the common criticisms I'm seeing early on about this movie is the Adam Warlock thing. He's got about 10 minutes of screen time. It's not the fact that he has a lack of screen time or the fact that he does at first feel shoehorned into the movie, but then when you see what his plot line entails, it makes sense in the long run. It's not that. It's more of the fact of the character himself. James Gunn has a habit of turning iconic characters from the comics into jokes. And that's essentially what Adam Warlock becomes in this movie. He just becomes a giant joke. He becomes the brunt of a quip, and he's literally the goofiest, stupidest idiot in the entire movie. James Gunn does that a lot. I think that that's actually one of his weaknesses as a writer, is that he really dumbs down a lot of characters. He did it with Drax in Volume 2, I think, because Drax just kind of became the funny guy, and Drax is still just the funny guy in this movie, but at least they address why Drax sort of is the stupid guy and is the big lovable idiot. And Adam Warlock, that's not addressed with him, you know. It's just he's there just to be the brunt of the joke. He fulfills the storyline, even though I wasn't 100% on board with it at first when it started. I was on board with it at the end, and where we ended up with Adam Warlock is just the character itself I didn't really like. And there were a couple of moments in the action scenes, as cool as they were, and as creative as they were too, because they do get creative, and I will give James Gunn that. There were a couple of quick cuts and a couple of camera spins that he tried to make a little too swift, and it felt like he was cutting away from the action a little bit too much in some scenes, but it's mostly in camera and it's mostly comprehensible, so at least I can give him that. I really enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I don't think it's as good as the first one. The first one, it was like lightning in a bottle. It just struck gold, introduced us to all these characters that we love, and now These are some of the most lovable MCU characters. It expands their arcs and makes them even more relatable as characters with all the emotional drama that they're all dealing with. I didn't even talk about Gamora in this review. I feel like I should save Gamora for the spoiler review. Let's just say I wasn't fully on board with what James Gunn was doing with Gamora, but he was also backed into a corner with Infinity War when Thanos killed her in Infinity War. And then in Endgame, she's brought back to the present because it's the past version of Gamora. And now in this movie, it's the past version of Gamora that doesn't really know or fall in love with Peter Quill. James Gunn had to write around that, and that wasn't easy. In that sense, I can overlook that. That had to be a hard task for James Gunn and to incorporate elements like that into the script for Gamora, but where she ends up, not gonna say I'm 100% on board, but I was mostly satisfied with her character in this movie. And as I said, not as good as one, better than two, not a knock against two. I think that this out of the Guardians movies has the perfect balance of tone. Emotional drama, but yet enough humor that we know about from these characters. One of the complaints with Guardians 2 was that the humor overrode the emotional drama. I didn't really see that with this movie. Sure, maybe after an emotional scene, they did cut away to a scene that was jokey, but they didn't throw the jokes into the emotional scenes. I think that that was a weakness of 2. That's not the case here, and I give James Gunn a lot of credit for that. I'm going to say I really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 with a full bucket of popcorn. This could go up on my second rewatch. It could go up to popcorn heaven, but who knows? I really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Curious to know what you guys think when it comes out next week. So when it does come out next week, let me know what you think of Guardians 3 and what is your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie or MCU movie with the Guardians of the Galaxy in it. Let me know in the comment section below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.